Hello, welcome to the Heart of the Dojo podcast, where we return each week to the roots of Aikido through exploring culture, techniques, and concepts, and all the people we meet along the way. This is our first episode, and I'm Andrew Blevins, and I'm the Dojo Cho of Kiryu Aikido, and the host today, and our co-hosts introduce themselves.
Go ahead, Kara.
I'm Kara Stewart. I'm an instructor at the California Dojo of Kiryu Aikido.
And I'm Steveson, and I'm the instructor of the Colorado Dojo, Kiryu.
Well, glad to get us all together today. This is exciting. Our first kind of podcast and get together. And we have all been kind of working out together probably for over 15 to 25 plus years. Would you say, or 20 plus years, less on?
Yep,
for you?
20 years coming up.
Yeah.
Good anniversary.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Next year. Yes. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about testing in Aikido, and we're going to be kind of focusing on three different aspects of that testing that we thought might be fun outside of specific techniques. So I thought I might kick it off today talking about, or we all kind of introduce what we think of testing and why we think maybe it's important, especially in today's Aikido. So maybe I'll one of you two want to kind of kick it off about that.
Sure, I can start. So some of the thoughts that I have on testing is just that with anything in life, you have to have goals, and they can be incremental goals, or they can be, large visions. Like, what is your vision in life? And there's lots of folks that come to Aikido that sometimes don't have even small goals. They may have a vision of where they want to be at work and stuff like that, but I think that a lot of the times people focus too much on work and not on their off time. So to have goals at the dojo of moving up on certain levels, and I think, like I said, Aikido, the Hanbu Dojo, and Aikikai, and in general, have really put everything together. So it's kind of simple to see where you need to go, right? And you can look at hours, and you can also, look at the techniques. And I think that, once you start doing those small goals, that, other things pick up in your life, and it kind of transcends from Aikido to your regular life, that then you start doing goals yourself. So those are kind of my thoughts real quick. Tarsa?
Yeah. And would you say that's on that, how do you feel when people kind of don't have those goals, or they're not really using those to set those? Do you kind of see kind of harder and harder for people to show up to class, and or not as motivated? And
yeah, I think they're kind of seeing they wander, is what I say. They want to learn all the cool techniques, but it's like, well, I mean, you have to have a foundation with anything, a house, your education, your family. You have to have a foundation, and if you don't, focus on something that you're trying to move towards, then yeah, you're kind of wandering around, and I don't think you have the same abilities or the same intent to do the martial art.
yeah, and I like how you also said that how whatever Aikikai or even other dojos, and we had testing before that as well, but about really having a simplified way to set what techniques that you need to know at each level. Of course, a lot of the techniques are repeated, so that you're expected at the next levels to now demonstrate the same techniques at a little bit higher level each time. So yeah, I like that thought. Kara, what are your thoughts on testing and why it might be important?
Yeah, great points, and I agree with those. Testing, Aikido is not a competitive martial art. We don't have combats and all tournaments and all that kind of thing. But I really look at testing for myself, and I think that may be the goal of Aikido, is to really see it as a competition in a good way for your own self, for your growth. Like you were saying, Lesson, like having goals and getting to that next level. And I know when I first started, and I still do this, I kept a little, like a paper checklist that I could put on my next hours of class. And that gave me so much joy to get to 20 hours and 50 hours. And those were goals that I set for myself. So in testing, I really see it as an opportunity to really show the world what you've been practicing, and to show yourself as well, like, wow, I made it through that test. It might be your fifth Q test with like 4 techniques on it, but to get to that test is like you learn those 4 techniques, and that's a really cool thing. And you can own that and take that confidence to the next level and just keep growing. So I think testing is a really good opportunity for that.
Yeah, yeah. I resonate with both of what you're saying, and I think the big thing for me, I always think that, is testing really for the dojo, or is it for the sensei, or is it for the person? And I personally think at a deeper level that testing is really for the person to um let everyone know what they've been working on, and that the level that they're at the time, and to take pride and ownership of that. And again, people always want to say, I'm ready to test, and say, okay, that's, I've been at a few different dojos for different martial arts. And I remember when I did kendo or iaido, the sensei said, you can test whenever you want as long as you got the hours, but you're the one who needs to say that you're ready or not, right? It's not me to say that. And in our dojo, I think we kind of, as a happy medium in between, we're kind of like, let them know where they're ready and help them prepare, because ultimately we want everybody to succeed. So we want to give them the tools that they're ready to, when they take that test, that they're ultimately proud of what they did and they worked hard to achieve that. So I think testing is a great tool. And like Leson said as well, like, help people set those milestones along the way so they can know what to work on next, right? Because it's a big goal. Like all of us have been training a long time. So how do you continue to motivate and train yourself? And like you said, Les, we've been talking recently, about, how do you also keep everybody in the dojo motivated and excited about their training and showing up to class and all that kind of stuff. Is like, I think those dates and those times ahead to say, let's work towards these goals. And I think it's an excitement. What does everybody think about how their selves getting their pride in their, making themselves feel strong about their own Aikido is important or not?
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is variety, right? If you don't have variety in the dojo, although you have levels you have to go through, but there can always be variety. And that's the great thing about Aikido, is you can think you're at one level and then you go to a different dojo, or you watch a video of another dojo, maybe on Facebook, and you're like, wow, I have no idea what that technique was, right?
Right.
And it's always evolving. So it's like, there's always somebody that's up and coming that's, taking the basics, traditional, but, they continue with the moving it forward, evolving it and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of cool just to see that. But I think the big thing is you have to have some variety in it. Of course, some things should be the same every time, right? Warm up should be the same, right? To get the students in a path of this is what we do every time. In the ending, with Sori Waza Kokyoho or something like that, just the same ending every time. So it blends right back into what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I do like the variety thing, and I think also that's a really good point about, that's the danger also of testing as well, is sometimes that you're always working on those 5 techniques or always working those 10 techniques. And I think that's the nice thing about when we teach, we're always thinking about, yes, that should be included, but there's so much variety of techniques, right? Like, I know every time I train with Les Sensei in Colorado, he loves to do Tantadori, right? Like, so we know we get Tantadori when we train with Les.
Yes.
Right? So, or I remember a long time used to enjoy Ushiro Ryotedori stuff, or there's so many different techniques, Ushiro, the back where we grab the neck, and the 2-hand grabs, and all the different grabs and all the different strikes. And there's so many, and then also the different techniques. So there's so much variety, and like you said, you also hinted on that there's a lot of varieties and different styles as well, and that's, I think, a future podcast or a future discussion of like how do we learn and enjoy some of those techniques and bring some of that goodness into some of our practice. So
yeah. One thing I found in testing, and it's really helped me, and I think it speaks to that spirit of community that you were both talking about, and that's it's kind of a cliche, but it takes a dojo, you know, like it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a dojo to help somebody get ready for a test, because if I'm testing, I need ukes, and if they're testing, they need ukes, and we're all together in this effort to help each other have a good test. And even if I'm not testing, I love being an uke, and I think a lot of people feel that way. Like, yeah, I want to help you get ready. And I've had the benefit of Lesson. You've been an amazing senpai for me, and some other senpais along my life that have helped me really get ready for a test. So just that community spirit that can build when a dojo is preparing for a test, I think that can be a really motivating thing.
I agree.
yeah, and I think about that is also of that you build relationships with people, and also you work with everybody in the dojo, but also when you're getting ready for a test, both from a senpai perspective and say, hey, can I help you? I'm going to be your uke, or can we work through techniques? Or we work together. And since I remember how many times have we're about to do testing. I'm like, okay, who's everybody's ukes? And they're like, that's not your responsibility, right? That's not my responsibility. Right. And you're like, you guys haven't worked that out ahead of time? Like, I maybe 6 or 1 year before, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do my test. Here's the 5 people I want to work with. Like, that's your responsibility, right? You know, or you know, it's not the dojo to provide that for you, but that's part of the relationship building, right? Is ask people ahead of time, will you be my uke? Would you be okay doing that? Let's work together, right? So
it's kind of hard to do Aikido without it. So
yeah.
It kind of is, yeah. Yes.
I mean, think about a bigger dojo. You remember, let's say when we were at Nippon Con, like, you know, if you have 150 people in there, right, you're not going to have somebody assigned to a uke. You've been working with specific people or go to specific classes, and you've said, hey, can we work together so we are comfortable with each other at a certain level? So, and that goes to what you were saying, Kara. I think it's really important. So, yeah. Did you have anything to add, Lesson?
Nope, none on that subject. Good.
Yeah, so I think that the next that we were going to talk about 3 topics today, and we talked about why it's important, but you know, it's a podcast, so it's kind of hard to talk about specific techniques, and you know, we could show things, but one of the things that we wanted to talk through is a little bit more of conceptual or important things that we think are important to add into our Aikido, and those are the first one is Zanshin, and Zanshin is, you know, I would, you know, how do we define Zanshin in itself? I think that's the first thing. And I think all of us have different perspectives and ideas of what Zanshin is, but who wants to kind of go first on this? I'd be happy to start as well, but.
Yeah. Anybody? Well, what's the true definition in Japanese of Zanshin? And then we can share our thoughts on that. I'm just curious, like what the true essence of it is.
That's a good question. I actually haven't looked it up in a while, but you know, I think it's that's a good. Lesson's pulling it up here.
Yeah. And for me, it's really about continuing awareness. Like it's not just awareness of the technique, but it's what's going on around you, and keeping that connection the whole time of that technique, and the whole test, and the whole class, and all that stuff. So that to me is a big part of what Zanshin is, just your awareness that's solid. It doesn't waver and go up and down with energy levels.
Yeah. And I define Zanshin as commitment of purpose, a commitment of the technique or the movements at the time, and also the Zanshin is awareness of complete awareness of both the technique that you're doing and awareness of what's around you, and that that full, like, as I'm doing this, everything around me, I have that aware me. And we say in our style and our technique, because our training, tateki no kurai, means always multiple attackers are in our thing. So if we're always worrying and thinking about multiple people attacking us, even if we're working one-on-one, we're always throwing, making sure our Zanshin is complete and we're finishing out the techniques. Both when we throw a technique and we complete it, sometimes you see that kind of muddleness, the muddiness or whatever, and people kind of half throw and then they're kind of not committed and the person really doesn't fall, right? And then the other side, you're throwing, but you're so focused on that person down there that they're not aware that somebody's going to come up and whack them in the back of the head behind them. So that's kind of the kind of thought I had and what I think of when I think about Zanshin.
So Zanshin, from translation, is a state of awareness of relaxed alertness in Japanese martial arts. A literal translation of Zanshin is remaining mind or close to mushin. In several martial arts, Zanshin refers more narrowly to the body's posture after a technique is executed.
So it had a few different components in there. It had the body's posture and I would say a posture of completeness, I would say, and then like you said, that mind, state of mind, that it's out there and with there
continuing.
Yes. What do you feel about Zanshin? What is that for you, Leson?
Well, I mean, I think the difference is just energy. So somebody that doesn't have energy cannot have Zanshin. So you can still be alert in your state of mind, but if you don't present Zanshin, both in being an uke and a nage or a tori, then it's difficult to do techniques, because more, I guess, people that are soft or just don't have the awareness of their body mechanics and stuff like that. I mean, you have like beginners that you go to throw them and they're so stiff, right, as the uke, and they fall, and you could relate that as they have Zanshin in their body, but it's more nerves, or they're fearful of getting thrown, right? Then you have the nage, when he has good Zanshin and the uke has good Zanshin, and then I think it's more of a flow, because although the energy's there, it's just that they're working together. So the Zanshin follows through to the uke. So to me, I think the nage has to have good Zanshin, but the uke has to have good Zanshin as well. Otherwise, it's just kind of flat, right? I mean, because people, as well as I do, you throw somebody and you do a ki, right? And then they just look at you like you're crazy, right? Because you're like, yeah, right? And they're just like, man, this guy's nuts, right? In reality, they should be kind of ki-ing too internally when they get thrown. And I think you can develop that, because obviously the more and more you do Aikido, the harder you throw is, I think you have more Zanshin. So if you can't throw hard if you don't have Zanshin. I mean, you can recklessly throw people, but that is not Zanshin. Zanshin is controlling your body, controlling the mat, and then controlling your uke as well. So, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, those are good, and I really like the point about uke in Zanshin.
Yes.
And if you think about Zanshin at the end of a technique, or the technique, two points on that was interesting. One is when we're attacking, right? We're coming in, like that attack has both a committed focus, and also that you're following through with that, right? And so there's that there, and then the other part of that is awareness, like. And so when we're practicing, a lot of times when we're doing randori or we're in a class with a lot of people, what's the most dangerous kind of spot? It's usually when two ukes run into each other, or one uke gets thrown into another.
Right.
And that Zanshin of you're attacking, but you're also like the whole time you're aware that something's coming in, or when you're being thrown, both from a second uke, when this guy's coming towards me, I get out of the way. Like you have to have that Zanshin of awareness of your own commitment of attacks, and also so I like that two-sided. It's not just we don't practice by them ourselves, right? So I think that's a really good point. Do you have
Yeah.
anything thoughts on that, Kara?
I love adding in the part about the uke lesson, because that's so true. Something that I've been shown is with Zanshin as an uke is you don't fall and kind of get up and look around and go, oh, I need to attack again. It's like you're falling, you're aware of where your nage is, you stand up. Ideally, I'm working on this. You stand up like at the right space. If it's just the two of you, at the right space when you get up, so you're ready to attack with a good committed attack. And there's not that, the best way I can put it is that lack of connection, like that connection breaks. You fall as an uke, you get up, have to realize, oh, I'm in Aikido now, I need to attack again. But instead you fall, you have awareness of where you are, you get up martially aware of where things are, if there's other people in the class as well. And then you continue to attack with good martial spirit. And as Nage, same thing. I mean, you're throwing, like you said, Lesson, it's not an aggressive, angry kind of throw. It has a lot of energy in it, and that helps your uke have that same energy. So it's continuing that connection. That's really what I think of with Zanshin. It's like this thread that goes through, that just continues. It doesn't break.
What's interesting too is just even with, obviously with new people, but even people that aren't new, is they're so afraid sometimes to show the Zanshin or the ki, right?
Yes.
It's just like, this is your practice. So, what I try to tell them now with the ki-eyes and the Zanshin is just that, you have all this energy stored up, and then you're trying to push that energy through the through the uke, that kind of extends into the mat, and not crazily, but look at. But it's so funny when people have a hard time, ki-eyeing. It's a little bit off as Zanshin, but they just have a problem with ki-eyeing, and it's like they sound like little mouses, instead of big, even when they're warming up, it's like, even if you've had a hard week, right, and you're working out maybe only one day a week, right, which is better than 0 times a week,
right.
Even the warm up, it's hard sometimes to focus that Zanshin, because you can have the same Zanshin when you're warming up, and it's just kind of interesting to see new people. And then once that light bulb goes off, then it's like, whoa, this is kind of cool. I'm not being judged, right? No one's really looking at me, and I'm not going to be perfect on my techniques, and I'm not going to be perfect on my Zanshin or my ki-eyes, but it's their practice. It's not somebody else's practice. So another thing that's kind of Zanshin of just, it's a mindset. I think that you have to have the proper mindset, but you also have to have fun too. That's why I said some people see Zanshin as, well, I mean, you look like you're nuts, when you're doing that. It's like, well, there's a lot of connectivity there, right?
And we say the word Kiken Taichi, right? Body, mind, and spirit together. So, and if you have all that together when you throw and you move and all that, like, again, how do you have your technique and your mind in one place, but you don't have spirit, right? Or if you have your great technique, but you're not really there and you're not present, and you don't. So I think it's all there, like you said. It has to be connected. And the cool part about it is, like, in a good class, and I think when you have people ready from warm-ups till when you bow out at the end of the class as one, everybody's should be just mentally focused, and you're tired at the end of class in a good way, like recharge tired, because that whole time, right? Versus sometimes you see people kind of, you work out with somebody and then they're like, you bow, and then their brain kind of like, it's like in life we got to be kind of connected a little bit through that, and the more we can practice that connection throughout class, the more we don't have to reset all the time, I would think.
Yeah, it's either that or like, man, I'm glad this hour's over. No.
right.
We want people to try Aikido now.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So how do you think Zanshin helps our Aikido? I think that's the kind of, we talk about that, we kind of talked a little bit about what it is. But what do you think in the end, if you see people with great Zanshin and they do it continually, how do you think that helps your Aikido in the end? You know?
Yeah, I think for me, I have a horse teacher, and that's the reason I got into Aikido. His name is Mark Rashid. And something he talks about, and it translates directly, in my opinion, is a horse doing something from the outside versus the inside. So a horse that's been, kind of dominated into performing correctly will do the right stuff on the outside, but inside he's not okay. He's not okay. It looks good on the outside. And I think the same thing can happen with a human in Aikido. We can be doing the techniques on the outside. We're doing a nice Nikyo, a nice whatever, but our spirit's not there. It's like we're flat or afraid or something. And I think, like you said, the Kiken Taichi, when we blend that together with Zanshin, I think it expresses itself in our technique and also our presence. And I think it helps us in the bigger, more important scheme, get more out of Aikido, because it starts integrating the technique, the energy, all that stuff into us. It's not just this outside thing we do, a nice Kodagaish, awesome, but it really starts integrating that energy into everything we do. That's what I think about Zanshin.
Yeah, and I think you had a really important thing about, Les San mentioned, doing it during warm-ups and doing it when you're doing your ukemi, or doing it when you're working with each other. And you talked about sometimes you see people do these techniques and they're not comfortable. And Les San said, you should be doing this in our practice, in our dojo, right? And so you see people trying to do things in their testing when they're not comfortable with it. That's what our practice is about. And that's why practicing that Zanshin and following those techniques and those things throughout our practice, so that when we're doing our test, that test shouldn't be something spectacular. The test is a demonstration of us that we do all the time.
Yes.
Right. And so I think, but our dojos, I hate to say the word, but safe environment where you can do big movements and big voice, and we know how to protect ourselves, and we know each other, and we know that we're all in there to keep each other healthy and strong. But we're also saying, hey, we're being strong and doing our Aikido in a strong way. And now is the time to practice it, not 5 minutes before the test, right? Or 5 minutes before you need to do it, or even worse, 5 minutes before somebody actually attacks you, right? That's not the time when you're practicing big, strong movements, right? It's every day or every practice that you can. So that's some great thought on the benefits of Zanshin. What do you think, Les San?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Kara-san hit it on the head, but I don't ride horses because they're big animals. It's just energy, right? And you can't have energy throughout the whole practice, because your head will explode, right? If you're Ki-in and Zanshin and everyone, right? But it's something that like you're talking about a test. It's just something you can't turn on and off. You have to have been practicing it. If you don't practice it, you're not going to do it. I mean, you can read all the books on, say, you rise to the level of your training, of course. So if you never train that way, or you never think that way, well, you're not going to do it. And I can tell you from teaching and doing other things, not in martial arts, that, when there's a critical incident or something is happening and you haven't been trained that way, you have no snapshots and or physicality to refer back to. So that's why it's important to do the Zanshin. And plus, I think, when people are doing the Zanshin and, they're doing the Ki-Is and stuff like that, they can be part of the leadership group at the dojo, right? I mean, you don't have to be the sensei or whatever. Anybody can be the leader. And as long as, they're demonstrating, the good Zanshin, I think they can, help quite a bit. And the other thing I think is like rituals make habits. So if you're never doing Zanshin, right, you're never going to get that habit. And people will say, oh, yeah, I will. It's like, well, you never do it, right? So that's why rituals are good, because everybody has a ritual, or I guess what's the other word I would use? A routine, right? And routine most of the time can make good habits. I think if you if you do this option every once in a while, then I think you will build good habits. And you can see it from when other people come up from different dojos, when they do Zanshin and Ki-Eyes, right? People are just like, wow, right? They take notice of that. And realistically, that should be the norm, not the exception, that, wow, somebody did a Ki-Eye or somebody did good Zanshin. So it's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. I think both of you had really good points, and I think of that as well. Of you talked about every practice you make is I think you said ritual, but I think of it as every practice is you do it as if you're going to do the practice, right? You're doing that technique. And I remember it, where we used to practice at a bigger school, where in the beginner's class, a lot of times where they may not have much Zanshin, or they might change the techniques in the beginner's classes to reflect, well, this is a little easier for a beginner to do this movement. Not that you have to do it fast or hard, but I always said, when I was a chief instructor there, I'm like, hey, we all have to do the techniques as if, it can be slow and strong, but you have to do it as if you're going to do the technique right every single time. And so when people then join the general class, they're not used to some form of no Zanshin and the wrong techniques and all that. We were talking about this recently when we were practicing weapons. Like, even if we're going slow, we do full furi kaburi, and we do full finish it out on the techniques. Even if I'm showing something slow, like I'm going to show the right technique in a slow, big movement. And so we're always practicing, like both of you said, this full movement of commitment and focus. So it can be exhausting sometimes, but I also think your body kind of just builds into it. You're right, Leson. You can't be just every time, but right. But I remember when I used to practice kendo, right? All night, man, kata, you're just yelling all the time, but you're building up this breathing. It's breathing, right? Right, when we breathe and have it's a muscle in our brain, and Zanshin's a muscle, I think. So as you see, like when people come visit and you can see that they practice that strongness, or people that don't practice that strongness, you can feel in their techniques, do these people have that moment? And I think that truly is the benefit of practicing Zanshin when you practice and really focus on. And you see that when they do techniques, you see that when they test, you see that when you meet them. Like if you shake their hands and those people, you're like, wow, that person has a presence. And I think part of that is built from Zanshin. It might be my underarm smell or something, but that's
Nice.
Well, and Zanshin, like you said, Zanshin is not fast. Somebody does something fast and just throws somebody onto the mat. That is not Zanshin, because again, like we just talked about, you're not taking care of the uke, you're not taking care of yourself, and you're just going at 100 miles an hour. And like you said, it builds resiliency when you continue to do the same habit or the same, technique, and you continue to do the Ki-Eye. It builds a resiliency in your body, which can, ultimately help the uke too. So all around it helps just about everybody.
And wrapping that round before we move on to the next one is that, ultimately for testing, if you practice this during practice and you build these repetitions and these movements and this presence, you're going to do that when your tests, and that your test will look and feel much more strong and different if you continue to practice that. We can bring up some ideas, and we can show some videos sometime of these, but definitely I think we had a nice discussion on that part. The next kind of I think is an important one, and we hear it all the time, right? Is martialness in our Aikido. And and I guess I think it's definitely a subjective thing. Some schools are a little lighter, and some schools are a little heavier on their kind of, I would say, roughness factor. But on that scheme of things, just like you said, Zanshin doesn't have to be fast or slow, right? Martialness doesn't have to mean brutalness or hardness in that sense. But how does martialness come out in Aikido, or coming out in our Aikido? Anybody want to start on that one?
Yeah, well, as a smaller person, in my next life I'll be 5'10", but right now I'm not that. And martialness for me, I remember practicing with somebody, and it was kind of this, not quite, but like the movie 300, like spittle, just like. But yet they didn't really have martial spirit. It was more like aggression and anger and proving something, and it yeah, it was interesting to practice with that person. It just was. It taught me some things. Like, for me, that's not a martial spirit. That's just, I'm not sure what that is, but that isn't what I want for me. So I had a real challenge, personal story, when I was getting ready to test for my first degree black belt test. And Andrew Sensei had a conversation with me like, your techniques are great. You're ready for that. Your martial spirit is not there. You might not be testing. And I'm like, holy cow, I leave class every night, drenched in sweat, and how can I practice any harder? But I realized I wasn't bringing my spirit up. I was kind of doing things on the outside a little bit and not letting that light out. And I'll never be as loud as some guys, but once I realized that, and that there was so much more that I could bring to my practice with my martial spirit, the door really opened up. So it's not about size. It's not about meanness. It's not about spittle flying off of your face. It's really about presence. Just, so yeah.
What are you saying, Kara?
Yeah, I think there's a.
But it can be that. It can be that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So what is martialness in Aikido to you, Leson?
Well, I'm going to kind of go off what Kara-san just said. So I think it's just it shows a controlled purpose, right? In the way you carry yourself. Just like with anything in my line of work, there's the difference between officer presence and professional presence. An officer, anybody can be an officer, anybody can put the uniform on, anybody can do this and that. But a professional is just that. You act in a professional way. You treat people in a respectful way. And that doesn't just show on the mat. So to have martial spirit, you have to show martial spirit on the mat and off the mat. And again, like Kara-san is talking about, people that are generally aggressive like that. That's how they are in real life. They're aggressive and so forth. So I think that, like I said, just show a controlled purpose, and that's the martial spirit. You can see when people are working out, you say, well, those are great Joe techniques, right? Those are great Joe Saburi techniques. Now these 5, I want you to put martial spirit into that. And then you tell them that, and then the focus switches, right? The focus switches to, now they're focusing forward, and they're usually ki-eyeing, and that Zanshin is there the entire movement. It's not, before it was just like 1 and 2 and 3, and now it's just like 1 and they put all that energy in their body and stuff like that. So to me, that's the controlled purpose. And again, when you're on or off the mat, it kind of should transcend both ways, not just, hey, well, I'm on the mat, I'm going to have martial spirit. I think even off the mat, you have to have that martial spirit, the way you carry yourself.
Yeah, it's a good point. On that point is that, it's kind of that, the concept of the samurai, right? In that sense where, when they're fighting, or they're walking on the street, or they're in the dojo, or they're always conducting themselves with focus, demeanor, and they have their kind of code of conduct, but also that they're always aware that any moment they're ready to be professional, but they're also ready to, fight to the death at any time. And so, and I know that's not exactly what we said last time, but I think, that's that we're always in that mode, and again, when we first start Aikido, first start martial arts, that martialness, maybe your martialness when you bow into your partner, and then you bow out and you're like, okay, now I can. Then eventually maybe your martialness is from the beginning of the class to the end of class. And then you bow out of class, and you're like, and then you walk out of class, and then you get hit by a car because you're not paying attention, right? And then eventually is, how do we bring that outside of that class? Is that we're aware, we're we're there, we're kind, and we also have those things, but also that we're paying attention to our surroundings and we're here. And for me, how I see martialness and Aikido and in life, and also, we hear this when we went to testing and people say we need to have more martialness, or you hear other dojos say we want to see martialness, and we want to see this, is both in the commitment of the attacks. And I would say that that's where it starts, because how do you do Aikido in general? How do you do Aikido unless we're doing Sen no Sen and we initiate, right? But or there's other situations, but it all starts with the attack. So we start with committed, strong attacks, and the target. We talk about this all the time, right, Kara-san, is that
Yes.
we're coming in. The attack is focused on where you're going, and 100% you focus on finishing out what you were starting with. And also our style, again, we're always protecting ourselves as a uke, because we're not so unmartial that we're attacking, but we're not aware of both our position and also what's going on around us as a uke, right? And then once that attack goes, then that martialness is, am I ready? And we talk about this a lot less on in the past 20 years as well, like where we throw and then we throw down, we have good Zanshin and we go through, and then people lose that connection and they're fixing their gi and they're coming around, they're looking around at the, the clock and all this kind of stuff. And the person gets up and then you're like, okay, you ready again? Okay, let's go. Right. But that's part of the martialness, is we throw down, double quote, right? I'm done. We throw down, and then we go down. And as I'm throwing down, I finish my Zanshin, and then I am checking all my positions through my movement, right? That Tenkan or Uchi Tenkan, and I come around, and then by the time I get around, I've already looked around and my eyes are up. Then my attention comes back to that partner, and I offer, or they come back in, and I'm saying, "Come on, get me again," right? And we're ready, and then we follow through again through the connection of that technique, and again, committed attack, and then as the uke or the nage, we throw down, we go down, and then we're always keeping that, technique. A good example we talk about in technique is ushiro ryote, ryote dori tenchinage ushiro, right? Where people come around and we turn around and people are looking at their partner the whole time. They're looking them in the eye, versus sometimes we can look behind us and check what's going on, right? Oops, somebody's coming to hit me from behind.
Right.
That's not gonna work, right? So how do we keep that tateki no kurai, or multiple attackers, in there? And that's kind of a thought of martialness, a few aspects of martialness. I know there's a lot there. Sorry.
Good.
It's good.
Let's see. I guess that was another concept of what's the difference between roughness and martialness. Any thoughts there?
Well, control, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just having a purpose, right? I mean, if you're just there to brutalize people and hit people, I mean, it's really not. I mean, I guess it could be a martial art, but if you take karate or judo and stuff like that, I mean, some of their techniques are brutal. Some of their, absorption drills are brutal, right? But that's not the purpose of it. It's to make that person stronger. And then, but you have to weigh with the person that you're working with, right? I mean, the difference is you have a black belt with a white belt, and you're just slamming them to the ground and stuff like that. That's not martial. That's just taking advantage of something. So it's not being controlled, and you have no purpose at that point other than just trying to injure somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go into specifics, but I think at our old dojo, a lot of times, let's say there was people where that would say they're more brutal, but then there's also people that were just as hard, but they were martial and not rough, but it was just as painful or just as strong. Like, I don't know how the word, but I think you said a word of control and intent, right? And I think those are the two, in my opinion, of how you would say that is the intent. I like to throw hard and throw strong, but my intent is not to hurt you. My intent is to work together, and we work to have the strongest Aikido we can at the level that you're at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool to transfer that energy, right? That's what the uke is looking for. If you don't transfer the energy, then that's usually when people get hurt. I mean, honestly, right? So if someone's, going crazy and they're just, taking people out, the person doesn't know how to fall, that's a problem. So if you, but I mean, that's the ultimate. You want to transfer that energy from the nage to the uke with the proper zanshin and the proper martialness. And, that's so awesome when you see a student do that, right? Because you're like, wow, that was good. And like, well, I didn't think I did that very good. It's like, well, you did all the concepts perfect.
Right. Nice. Yeah.
Now just repeat that 3,000 times. But go ahead.
right. Yeah. That made me realize or remember something, and it's going to get a little woo-woo, a little danger here, but not really. That in really good, strong Aikidoists, there's a softness in their power. They can be throwing me super hard, but I think because there's not ego behind it, there's not anger, domination, like I'm going to crush you. There's softness in that power, and I can be thrown super hard, and it's like, all right, cool. That was just great transfer of energy, like you said last time, but it's not. But when people have that anger and that thing, that's not martialness. That's just whatever that is. But yeah, martial spirit with just really strong technique that's based in helping each other learn. Wow, that's amazing.
I guess maybe to wrap this one up, and we want to keep this fairly short, was that how would you either as an instructor or yourself, how do you practice martialness? How is that applicable? How do you applicate that? How do you do that in class, or how do you practice that on your techniques?
Well, I mean, I would say, again, it's just it falls back to me with intent, right? People know if they're grabbing you or attacking you, and you're showing the proper intent and the movement. But it's also, a lot of it you have to lead by example. So like Kara said, if you're just chucking, hitting people and stuff like that, yeah, I guess that could be at times martialness, but you're not really leading by example, because especially if you're higher up in a dojo and you start throwing like that, then everybody wants to emulate that. And then that's when injuries start occurring, because you may have a third cue with a sixth cue or vice versa. And that's when people start throwing really hard. And that's, when people start getting hurt. So I think if you have the right intent and you lead by example, I think that kind of filters down to everybody.
Good thought. Yeah. I agree. Like practice with that intent and that focus throughout practice, but also keep it at a level where people are in control and understand what's going on. I agree.
Yep. And really that beautiful opportunity that practicing with different levels of people and different body sizes and all that's such a good opportunity for all of us to practice. We are what we practice. So practicing, bringing that martialness with every level that we're working with, and it's going to vary. It can't be the same. And I think that's another nice layer of Aikido.
Yeah. And I'll add to maybe recap the end here is that, what we talked about in Zanshin too, is that when we practice martialness, both, as I mentioned, in your life and in your practice and in every technique that you do, that will follow through in your testing, and also that awareness and focus is there, both from a protective of I'm protecting myself, and protecting my partners in the way that we're always keeping awareness of the situation. And also, I would say in testing, even more important, sometimes we're so riled up and we're so excited sometimes that I would say that then your martialness sometimes helps pull back the technique as well. So there's sometimes where we might be doing shihonage and we're fully focused on it so much, but our partner's not aware, or they're not on their toes or whatever, do I follow through and jam that down to the side, or that we practice that, or do I let go sometimes and let go of the hand and let it unroll a little bit so that I don't hurt their elbow or break their arm or something? And there's times in, you know, you can see in my demonstrations or my tests, like where we're hitting each other and we're throwing, and I'm throwing. There was one where Les was attacking me and I threw him right into Mike from LA Dojo, and we were throwing and we were doing this fun stuff and everybody was fine. But at a certain point, things kind of got there, and you know, I kind of said, okay, stop, whoa, like even if it for half a second, we kind of reset, and then come on, now let's go. You have to kind of be aware that, you know, somebody's upside down and they're about to land on their head. You know, you try to grab their neck, you try to grab their gi and help them up. Like the Zanshin is there for us to, the higher level we get, the more we should be aware of time and space, in the sense of we have more time to think about what's going on, and we can feel these things and we're like, something's off and I need to be aware of this. And that's really what I think is the ultimate level of our Aikido, is that we're so aware of what we're going on that we have the choice to fully engage, or we can go lighter, or we can actually, you'll see sometimes where we get it really off balance and people, and then we just kind of let them go down. Like, you know, maybe we felt that they were, you know, maybe, you know, they were off, too much off balance or something. So I think that's truly how I practice. And I think that kind of goes along with it, what all of you are saying, is that like, this is what martialness is. And I think a really good point Leson said earlier too, is that you also take that off the mat with you, right?
Yes.
And we leave the dojo and we're aware of what the parking lot's looking like, and what are these people doing over here, and you know, is there a car, and we're pulling out of the car, is there cars coming, are we using our, you know, that kind of stuff. It seems kind of goofy, but why can't we bring that focus into every day of us on our life as well? So it's a thought.
Yes.
Anything to add on martialness?
One tiny thing. Tiny thing. I believe that when Uke and Nage both continue to bring up their martial spirit, it helps each one improve their Aikido, because that it's just kind of this beautiful raising of energy together, and it just helps our Aikido develop better when everybody's bringing that spirit up.
Yeah. And as a Nage too, if somebody's really fully committing to the attack, you know that they're on balance, you know that they're protecting themselves, and they know how to fall, and they're also aware of what's going on. The level of Aikido and the level of both learning on the Nage side and also learning on the Uke side, and the level of Aikido, I always joke around like, oh, now we're doing Aikido. That's what I'm saying. Hey, I saw some cool things the students are doing. Like, okay, now we're doing Aikido. Like, you can feel that energy. You're like, this is it. This is why we're here. Like, yeah, that's a good thought, Kara. Like, the dynamic power or energy together can do good stuff. Nice. Why don't you introduce the last thing, Kara? This is your kind of concept, I think.
All right. It's an idea about owning your technique. So, you know, and let's open the door to you gentlemen as well. I've always, in my testing, I've always brought the phrase, welcome to my mat. And I try to, like you just said, Leson, bring what we are, what we practice. So I want to bring that feeling of welcome to my mat to all of my practices. And that for me means I am really excited to be here to share this martial art with other people, and let's go. Like, instead of like, oh my God, I have a test, this is horrible, I hope I just make it through. It's like, it's that presence thing. Like, I get on the mat, welcome to my mat. Let's go. Let's have a great practice. Let's have a great test. And just inviting that energy in to just do an awesome job and have fun with it. That's the other thing. So yeah, owning your technique. What does that look like for you both?
Both of you guys mentioned having fun in Aikido. What's going on with that?
I don't know. Sorry.
Well, certainly not on the mat. No.
No.
Yeah, I can take that next. I mean, I put, when I was thinking about this concept of, you know, let me show you my Aikido with humility. Like in the humility part of is that I'm not trying to say that I'm doing this. I want to say I practice and I practice hard, and I want to show I want to do Aikido with the full amount of my ability and my ability of my partner at that time. And I want to really focus on Zanshin, martialness, and movements and clarity of movement and all the stuff that we're doing. And then again, let's say, Sakoi, like, come on, let's go. Like, let's do this together. And if we're going to do something, let's do it like a 1 or 0. Like, if we're going to be on the mat, let's do it. And especially when you're doing your tests, the test is not the time to do stuff that you don't do in the normal dojo. The test is the time to say, I am, like you said, welcome to my mat, or let's show the stuff that we've been doing. This is no different than every day. And we talked about that earlier about now let me show you what I've been practicing, not let me show you what I thought I wanted to practice. And now I'm going to show you during tests. And so that's your time to say energy and go through. But again, to practice that at that moment, it's not the time. So it should be a natural occurrence and a natural feeling. And you can see that when people are comfortable with their Aikido and comfortable with their Zanshin and they're comfortable with their spirit, right? Oh, come get me. You can feel that energy in their hands and their body. And you can see that you're like, okay, I see that this person is not just showing Aikido, that they're doing Aikido, I guess is the way to do it. So, what about you, Leson?
Well,
it doesn't have to be this concept. It can be anything around this idea, right? Like of,
I just think, just be there, right? It's you get just on daily practice or whatever. A lot of people just come to be there, right? They don't, they're not there to practice. They're just there to be more of a social club or something like that, which is okay, right? But those people usually or generally do not last very long, right? Because I think they're looking for something different. And then, we're looking to practice martial art, whether it be an hour, 2 hours, or, a seminar for 4 or 6 hours. And, I just think sometimes you just have to be there, right? Come on the mat, be there. You want to work hard. And like I always said, people with injuries too, they, there's always options, right? We can be really flexible with that. But some people think they get injured. Now, obviously, if you have a broken arm or, an ACL or something like that, that's going to be a little difficult. But just little trivial things that I see, I'm just like, wow. I mean, seriously? I mean, we can do weapons. You can do one side. So you could just stay on the right side and do all the techniques. Just tell your, okay, this is what we're doing. So just if you're going to be there, just be there. If you're going to welcome yourself onto the mat, then make sure that you're going to be there. So that's my
it's a presence. You're saying be present. If you're gonna take all the whole energy to come down on a certain night, and you put on your gi and you tie your belt and you bow onto the mat, just make the full effort of it and be present and go for it. Is that kind of your thought, Leson?
Yeah, and like you said, the most hardest technique is getting through the front door.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's
not get started on that. That's another hour of discussion. So.
It is.
That's the top secret technique. We don't want to let everybody know the secrets yet. But I think that's some really good discussions on Zanshin, martialness, and owning your Aikido. And I think kind of to follow up, I would say I would like to kind of maybe last minute or two each, maybe just what if there's anything we missed on those 3 things, or just on testing in general, or a message that kind of resonated here. What's anything? I'll start with you, Kara.
The thing about we are what we practice, and we can't bring to our tests something that we haven't been practicing for weeks or months beforehand. And owning it in that way, like taking it upon ourselves to really, like you said, Leson, be there. Don't just show up to practice, be in practice and honor that time. The other thing that for me has been important is feeling like, martial arts a physical thing. So when I go to test, I am so thankful. Like I have 2 strong legs and I have arms and I can see and I am like healthy, and I'm so thankful for that because it's a physical martial art. Just so to be able to get on the mat, test, show what I've been working on. It's not going to be perfect, and it'll show me what I want to keep working on and improve on. But that opportunity to be there with people that are doing the same thing, that I find amazing about testing.
Okay, good. Yeah. What about Lesan? What's your last thoughts on testing or any of these concepts that we kind of didn't hit or resonated?
Yeah, I think it's just that, generally when you're going to test or the sensei asks you to test, you're ready to test. So you kind of need to put all that, everything we just talked about for the last hour, right? You need to put the Zanshin, right? You need to put the connection between you and the uke, and then you have to want to be there, right? So, and people are so afraid of testing, but actually, again, like Anderson said, it's showcasing what you've been doing for the last 3 months, right? It's just to show your abilities and to show that you're continually progressing, right? And that's where you want to be, because I can see right now from just some of the students at the dojo that, I mean, they started brand new and stuff like that, but you can see now that through the testing process and stuff that one, they look forward to the test, right? It's nothing that they're saying, ooh, you got to take the test, and they're not making excuses and all this other stuff. Well, sometimes you see that, right? But I think that they're looking forward to the test because it gives them that goal. I think when you have a huge break from not testing, then your goals go away. And then once your goals go away, sometimes your connection to the dojo goes away, right? There's not that excitement anymore. So I think once you have those goals and you want to, people have test anxiety, but I think it's also part of the dojo to bring that down a little bit and just to make sure that they know that it's, hey, you've been doing this for 3 months. You've been practicing for 3 months, and now you're just going to show everybody what you're capable of doing and stuff like that. So those would be my thoughts on it.
Yeah, and those are all great points from both of you. And I would say, finishing up, like, testing is your time to really, show the work and hard work and hard focus on all the things that you've been doing, and it's also to let you get a chance to set those goals and achieve those things and be proud of your the whole point is, and not from a humility point, not to be proud in front of other people, but just say, hey, I've set these goals. No matter what happens, even if you fall down and you whatever, like, it doesn't matter. Like, you set the goals, you did it, you got in front of the people, and you did your best at that time, right? And so that's really what the test is, and setting those goals. And I agree with Lesan was talking about, the last 2 years we've had, a lot of, time between some of the tests due to other things, but I think now that we're starting to get back in a better rhythm again, and we're starting to set those goals, I think it's so important that whether it's you set your goals for the test or you set your own goals, like right now where we're learning new sets of weapons and new things, like, all of us need goals and new challenges that we want to do. And those challenges could be focusing on specific techniques. I want to get more Zanshin this year. We always talk Kara Sanzi get 10% meaner, so always, I'm joking, but we always are focusing on things that we want to work on. So I think it was an awesome discussion today. And this is kind of, I wanted to thank Kara-san and Lesan, and that, and I'm excited to do more of these and have more discussions. As you can tell, we don't have much to say because we're at a minute and 4 now. So, but we had a great discussion, and this is what Aikido is all about, is really seeing what is there, and it's deeper than just learning how to do a certain technique. Of course, that's just as important, in having the expertise and the understanding of each of those techniques and lines and our movements and our weapons, and how do we have martialness and and how do we protect ourselves in Ukemi, but it's also these deeper things that we're learning, and how do we take that on and off the mat. And testing in this today, we were going to wrap it up of that. Testing is that time to really show everything you do. And as we test and go forward into new levels, we're just showing those same things at a higher level. It's really not, if you look at the test requirements, they're really not that much difference if you look at them. And it's really just saying that's where we see these deeper things. How are people reacting? How are people controlling the environment? How are people's attitudes? How are people's Zanshin? How are people's techniques, of course? And then again, over time, they're building relationships with people in the dojo, which, just like I said, the two people here, we've been working together a long time, and we build a relationship of Aikido and also friendship. And that's what Aikido is all about in the long, bigger scheme. And we build these along the way. So please join us for today and future podcasts. And thank you for the our Heart of the Dojo podcast. So thank you, everyone.
You.